Hey folks, welcome to Module 2. In this module, our expert will cover conversion tools and methods. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
All right, so now we get into the fun stuff. We're going to look at the tools and methods here that you can use to optimize your conversions. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. That's the whole purpose of testing. And speaking of testing, the next module after this one is actually going to be even more important than this one. We're doing this one first because it's a little bit more fun and exciting. People get excited about conversion optimization tools and stuff. The fundamentals, however, like tweaking your headlines, right? Or tweaking your background image, things like that. Those are actually much more important. They'll be covered in the next module. But for this one, we're going to go over cool things like, pop-ups and bars that slide in and little, bubbles that pop up and, try to get people to take an action and so on and so forth. And so let's just go down the list here. These are not in any particular order. This is just a list of things that are out there that you can try and that you can apply to your website. Okay? Let's start with social proof. Now, social proof can fall into a category where, let's say you have a long-form sales page or even a short-form sales page, where you just have a couple of testimonials, a testimonial section with a couple of testimonials, or if it's a long-form sales page, it would be a lot of testimonials usually, right? A big section with a bunch of testimonials. Social proof, it's an interesting one because when done in the traditional way with a little testimonial section, it seems really cliche. Most people would agree. It seems cliche. People look at them, and there's always kind of a skepticism about them, about whether they're even real or if they're exaggerated and so on and so forth. But one of the most important things you can learn and be aware of in the art of conversion optimization, or even in sales and marketing in general, is that things that are cliche, even to the customers, for some strange reason, they often still work. One example is actually pricing. Customers will always roll their eyes and scoff when they see a price at something that ends with 9 or 95 or 97, right? They hate it. They look at that and they think that you think that they're stupid. They think that you think that they don't understand that 9.97 is the same as 10. And they're annoyed by it. And yet, they're not conscious of this. But it actually still works. It actually increases the percent. It's been proven time and time again. It actually increases the percentage of people who buy. So the very people who are scoffing at it and being, annoyed by it and who find it cliche and silly, well, they themselves are the proof that it actually still works. And so you'll find that with a lot of these, and one of those areas is social proof. Social proof sometimes can seem cliche, but when you have a lot of it, boy, it works. It works if you display it in the correct way. So social proof, there's a few different hacks that we can think of here that you can try out. Number one, more. Right? More. That's a very basic one. There's not a whole lot of science there. You get more testimonials and cram them into your testimonial section, and the cumulative effect of having a bunch of testimonials can increase your conversions, right? Obviously, as with everything that we're going to mention, this is something that you test because there might be special circumstances that cause them to not have an impact or maybe even have a negative impact. But generally speaking, more would be the first scenario to look at with regard to testimonials and social proof. But another consideration is sort of surgical selectiveness, right? Where instead of having a big old testimonial section where the value is mostly in the cumulative force of how many there are and nobody actually reads any of them, they just see, oh wow, this guy has like 20 testimonials, and that influences their buying decision and maybe they're more likely to convert. Instead of doing that, you actually go through and you try to find a small little piece of each testimonial. You're looking for that money quote, right? The 1 or 2 sentence quote. And then you do that for each testimonial. And so you've got a smaller in terms of size, a smaller testimonial section, but maybe more impactful because people are more likely to read a 1 or 2 sentence quote than they are to read a big old block paragraph in a testimonial section. So that's another approach to take. Another one, though, is placement. Placement. And this is kind of advanced insofar as most people don't do this, but there's a lot of value in digging deep into your testimonials, especially if you have a testimonial from a well-recognized person. But even if that's not the case, if you can find one money quote that's like even a half sentence, even just a half dozen words, like the phrase "worth its weight in gold," or "it blew us away," or something like that, and you take that quote out and you add a ... to the beginning or the end of it and put it in quotation marks, and you put it at the top of your sales page or at the very beginning of your sales video. That is surprisingly very powerful. Very powerful. People see that, and it's one of those less is more situations. It just has kind of an epic oomph to it when people see one of those small, short money quotes placed prominently somewhere near the top of your sales page or the beginning of your sales video if you're doing a sales presentation. Another form of social proof is actually videos. A lot of people just have a big wall of video testimonials nowadays on their sales pages, and that can certainly be very beneficial. It adds a level of realness and believability. And then the final thing is the social proof apps. So these little bubbles that actually pop up on the bottom left or the bottom right of your sales page or your lead page that say so-and-so from Idaho or someone from Franklin, Tennessee or something like that just joined the program or just bought XYZ product. And they just keep cycling through. So the bubble pops up and disappears, and then about a second and a half later, another one pops up with a different person who just bought the product in question. And it's another one of those things that might seem cliche, but in many cases it still works despite being cliche. Right? Because at the end of the day, humans are still very much governed by psychology. Right? Those psychological phenomena, whether we think they're silly or not, they are at play and they do work. And the herd mentality is one of those. And so even a person who scoffs when they see those little social proof apps cycling through in the bottom left corner, whether they realize it or not, they are often more likely, subconsciously more likely to buy because they saw that. So that's a useful one. Another one is chatbots, or even one of those chat windows where a real human is either present live in real time, or one of those ones where you can type something and maybe at some point in the next 5, 10, 60 minutes, a human will get back to you. So they're kind of pseudo chat windows. Any of those have been proven to increase your conversion rates in many cases. Okay, it's not always going to work, but these actually do work, and there's many reasons for, or many speculated reasons for why even a chatbot that is not human has a positive impact on conversions. Sometimes it's just subconsciously the fact that there's a window there that someone could type into. Maybe it taps into one of those neurological or psychological things inside of us that makes us feel more comfortable about buying on a sales page. You could debate the reasons, but for whatever reason, they're very effective in many cases for a lot of businesses. In fact, chatbots, according to an article in Forbes, actually brought business owners a sales increase of 67%. 67% from one study that they looked at. And that's pretty impressive, as you can imagine. Increasing your sales by 67% is pretty insane for something that is just automated. It's a chat bot, not a human, a chat bot. And so chatbots are definitely something that you want to consider looking into. Another one is pop-ups and slide-ins and bars. So these are just attention-grabbing little features that you can add to your website. You can use a software service like Opt-in Monster, for example. And you can have these little attention-grabbing things slide into your website or pop up onto your website when somebody's on your page. They can be triggered to show up after a certain number of seconds or after they've scrolled down to a certain level or when they're about to exit the web page. It can be exit intent based. And you can convey a lot of different messages, right? A bar or a pop-up or one of those little slide-in messages that slides up from the bottom right can convey a bunch of things that can help your conversion rate, right? You could offer a coupon in those. And in fact, coupons are another thing altogether. We'll talk about those in a second. You could have one that pops up and mentions that you have free shipping this week or something along those lines. You could have one that pops up and brings their attention to a bonus on the page or to a certain feature or something along those lines. So pop-ups and bars and slide-ins, these little things they're more of a channel for presenting conversion optimizing things, right? So coupons and bonuses and sales and free shipping offers, those are the things that change conversions, that can affect your conversion rate. And these things like pop-ups and attention bars, these are the channels that you can use to convey that, to bring people's attention to those things. So those are definitely things that you want to consider investing in. Go try a free trial with something like Opt-in Monster or a similar service. Conversion Gorilla is a really good one if you're just interested in the attention bars that slide in from the top or the bottom or push the web page down and present a message. You can stick all sorts of things. You can stick videos in there if you want to. So that's a whole another category of tools that you can use at your disposal to see if you can increase your conversion rates. We mentioned coupons. Coupons are very powerful. It's another one of those things that people might scoff at sometimes or look at with a sense of skepticism. And yet they still work. They still work. So even something like a 10% coupon on a $10 offer. I mean, what are you saving? $2? For some strange reason, that still will increase conversion rates, right? So if you can factor in a coupon, a discount code, or something along those lines into your offer, that's very often going to be very beneficial to your conversion rates. We also mentioned bonuses. Bonuses are great. I mean, adding real and perceived value to an offer is one of the most guaranteed ways to get more people to want to grab the offer. It's very simple science, And so if you've done a good job of coming up with something to offer as a bonus that your target audience will be interested in, and you do a good job of conveying the value, what you feel should be the perceived value, bonuses can go a long way to increasing your conversions. And in many cases, it's going to come down to how do you convey or bring attention to the bonuses, right? So in a webinar, there's a certain science behind, the way that you present and introduce the bonuses and go through your bonus stack towards the end of the webinar after you've mentioned the main offer. If you're on a sales page, there's usually a bonus section at the bottom, but you can get proactive and you can actually have pop-ups or attention bars that come in that mention that you've just recently added a cool new bonus, right? And so bonuses can really help out with your conversion rate. If you can come up with things that are genuinely valuable and seem to your consumers to be disproportionately valuable, that can go a long way. That can really propel your conversion rates even higher. Another thing is micro commitments. So the actual type of form that you're using for getting an email opt-in or capturing a sale, right? There's some debate about this, and it's possible that it has changed in effectiveness over the last few years, just because, audiences are seeing more of it, and then they've become maybe immune to it or annoyed by it. But there's a case to be made, a strong enough case that it's always worth testing at least, that if you have an email opt-in form, for example, right there on a page, and people can see it as soon as they get there, they'll be more likely to leave the page because they don't like the idea. It causes some type of, micro stress in their brain, having to face the fact that they're going to have to type in their email address, right? And yet, if you hide that behind a button, just a button that says, send me the report, or yes, show it to me, or something along those lines, right? And you have that button there, and then when they click it, a light box opens up or some other portion of the form reveals itself, and now they see that they have to type in their email address, they'll be more likely to type it in and hit submit. So that's the argument, and it has been proven many, many times in the past. And it's called micro-commitments, because psychologically, once a person has already clicked the button, this isn't a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing. Once they've clicked the button, well, they've already come this far. They've already told themselves that they want the thing that you're offering for free, right? And if they've told themselves that they want it, well, then they're more likely to then continue on to the next step and click and fill out their email address. So that was proven to be effective. There's no question about that. That was, and I'm using the past tense word there, was. The question now that some people are debating is whether it's still effective, or whether it's one of those things that is sort of, lost its effectiveness because, something similar to the concept of banner blindness. People see it so often that it's either, it has a neutral impact or perhaps even a negative impact if it's annoying to people. Right? So that's why you always test, even with things that most people would consider fundamental. A lot of people would consider the concept of a two-step opt-in form, with micro-commitments, to be fundamental, just one of the basics. But because there's some questioning of it out there, because there's some, reasonable and understandable arguments that have been made that maybe it might be negatively impacting your conversion rates, why not test it? Why not run a split test, which we'll talk about in the next module, and see how it works. And that applies really to everything. All these things that we've just mentioned, you always want to run split tests and, try and determine whether or not there's a significant change in conversion rates based on that one isolated variable. And speaking of which, let's go ahead and call an end to this module, since we've gone through all of the cool little tools and hacks and methods. And let's get to the actual tweaking and split testing stuff, which, like I said, really forms the core and then the basics of conversion optimization. And we'll cover that in the next module.